Hi, and welcome back to the podcast. Episode 165 is a chat with Suke. Sam is a physiotherapist at Exercise Thought Physiotherapy. We riff about how our mental perspective influences our physical self. I personally am a big believer in how our thoughts influence our actions and also our rate of healing from injuries. A negative mindset, surprisingly, negatively influences all aspects of our life. Now, I know it's easier said than done, but we really need to try to speak positively about ourselves and our running ability, and also about how we are healing from injuries, all those little niggles. Let me know your thoughts on this topic by either emailing me, isabel@peakendurancecoaching.com.au, or DM me on socials. I'd really love to hear other people's thoughts. No, don't forget to join my Facebook group, Peak Endurance Running. I share lots of tips on running and living a healthy lifestyle, so get on board. Also, don't forget to use the code Isabel Ross, all caps, no spaces, to get a massive 15% off at Peak Chocolate, my favourite chocolate in the world. I simply cannot recommend their products highly enough, honestly. Give them a try and you won't go back to that Cadbury's rubbish. I'm sure you'll love them too. So go to their website, peakchocolate.com. Mind you, Ron eats Cadbury's, I don't know why. If you want quality personalised coaching, email me, isabel@peakendurancecoaching.com.au. Now, it doesn't matter what level runner you are and what your race plans are, or even if you have race plans, I can help you achieve your running goals, and I would love to hear from you. Please don't forget to rate and review the podcast. I don't actually get paid to do this podcast, believe it or not. I'm sure you believe that. Seeing more people enjoy it is payment for me. And that happens when people rate and review because it increases the exposure of the pod. So I really appreciate your help on this one. Thank you in advance. Enjoy my chat with Sam. We sure had lots of fun and probably will do it again in 2 years. All right, catch you later. Hi, Sam, and welcome back to the podcast.
Thanks, Isabel. Great to have you here.
Yeah, and how's everything been going for you?
Yeah, I shouldn't have said great to have you here. It's great to be here. Yeah, things are going really well for me. It's been really wonderful. 12 months, actually, even 2 years since we've spoken. I reckon.
Yeah,
last time,
right at the start of the pandemic, wasn't it?
Yeah, and right at the start of Exercise Thought. So we've now got 3 senior physios here and growing, and we've set the goal or the expectation of being the most known and loved health service in the Yarra Valley before 2025.
Nice one. I like it.
So yeah, which I suppose is relevant.
Were you just starting? You were just starting at the start of the pandemic.
Yeah, we opened in February 2020.
Oh, perfect timing. Well done.
It actually was. I think that if you want to learn how to adapt and change with the times, as every business and every person should, then you may as well practice it from the beginning. And we learned a lot of skills, and we learned a lot of, I suppose, talents and team attributes that will take us forward in good stead.
Yeah, so your business obviously grew during the pandemic. I mean, I was the same when the pandemic and everything closed and races stopped. I thought, well, that's it. No one's going to want to coach. But my business actually grew. So I think it has to do with, what we're going to be talking about is your belief system and how your positive outlook on things can actually influence what happens in your life and your physical body, and also, just generally in life. And that getting bogged down in negativity, although it may seem like that's, because, certainly at the start of the pandemic, that would have been easy to do, but instead not, and showing resilience and the ability to find a different way to do things. So that's kind of what we're sort of going to be speaking about in sort of broad terms, but talk to us about what Exercise Thought Physiotherapy is kind of all about. Just remind those people who may not have heard the podcast way back when.
Yeah, sure. So Exercise Thought Physiotherapy exercises the mind and educates the body. We're a very goal-orientated service, and we very much focus on anything that will equip an individual to recover faster or more completely or more permanently from something that troubles them, which is why, and it's not all about, let's ignore the pain and just be positive. It's all right, let's recognize what the problem is and then set meaningful objectives or meaningful goals that motivate us and inspire us through the difficulties of life. Because we know that having a goal is therapeutic. Having a goal is analgesic in the medical sense that it provides pain relief, and that when we have a purpose or when we have a meaning, and Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning is a really good book for any of you listeners who are interested in learning more about that. Yeah, it's a great one. Yeah, if you've got a purpose or a reason for getting up in the morning, a why is how Simon Sinek might describe it. That predicts a better recovery from injury, better results in physiotherapy, and I dare say better results in running. If you're a runner and you have a particular goal in mind, you're much more likely to achieve that than if you're just plodding along aimlessly.
Yeah, 100%. So so obviously you use the power of thought and intention and that sort of stuff within your physiotherapy realm, but how does that work? How does that happen? Like, yeah, so it's not just positive thinking. They don't just come in and get a few mantras off you and wander off. And
we don't just sit down, have a cup of tea, and then wish it all be better. So I suppose there's a couple of concrete examples that your listeners might like to play around with themselves. Some, I suppose, research that might make it interesting is that there were some studies done where certain sentences were said to the people to create an expectation either that something would hurt or that something would feel beneficial or relieving. So they would say to someone, okay, Isabel, this might feel like a small sting, or this might feel like a scratch, or something like that. They did it in other languages as well. They did it in German with the equivalent word, compared to saying to Isabel or a different group of people, we're about to begin, and not using any of the scratch, sting, kind of pain associated words. And people were much more likely to feel pain, to say ow, to withdraw their arm, if they were given the expectation that something unpleasant or threatening was about to occur. And we also see that this changes how people move as well. So if I said to someone, let's say someone came in with back pain, which is the most common presentation at Exercise Thought. If I said, okay, Isabel, tell me, how much does your back hurt when you bend forward? There's the prediction or the expectation that some amount of pain is going to be experienced in that bending movement, instead of it being more open-minded about, see how you go, tell us, and just, how's that?
More, how does that feel?
Exactly. Instead of it being a self-fulfilling prophecy. So, and there are times in our struggle and our discomfort, whether we're in the middle of an ultramarathon race or struggling to build a business during a pandemic in the early stages, where we have these expectations that we give ourselves about how things are going to go poorly or things are going to go well, and that can have either an accelerating or a decelerating effect on our momentum. So I suppose in practice yourself, you could practice that self-talk and question yourself, what expectations am I giving myself?
Can I just ask a question? Sorry, I just want to quickly go back. When those people were told this will sting, this will, whatever, would part of the pain that they felt, because when you prepare for that, you kind of tense?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because we know that pain is not a purely physical thing. It's not purely psychological either. It's something that we experience. It's something that we feel, and that is why when we look at someone's MRI, we don't know how they feel. We can a runner can come in with an MRI of their hamstring or of their knee, and that doesn't. It's a photo. It doesn't tell us how the person feels. So you got to treat the person, not the picture. And yes, it is because they tense up, not just physically tense up in their muscles or in their sinews, but their brain is more alert or more, I suppose, guarded. It's looking for threat because it's expecting something's bad is going to happen. And that's what pain is. It's a signal that something threatening is happening. And there's I suppose a funny story about how you can try to reduce threat, but then how sometimes mind over matter doesn't always work, which I'd love to share with you. Do you have any other questions on the research studies before we get into
No. That was the one I wanted. That was it.
Yeah. Please do ask more, because it is a fascinating topic for me. So yeah, I'm not just saying mind over matter, just think your way through it, because well, this story will demonstrate. I love running, always have. I love running barefoot, and I was training myself to run on concrete and on gravel.
Oh, that sounds horrible. It's bad enough running on concrete in shoes.
I quite like it, actually.
Really?
Yeah, because
Why?
I played a lot of basketball and did a lot of high jump when I was young, and that meant my knees did a lot of work. And when I run barefoot, my toes, feet, and ankles do a lot more of the work. So it's a lot more foot and calf, and it's a lot less knees.
Okay.
And that actually means that my knees feel happy. I can run further. Yes, my feet and toes can feel uncomfortable if I do too much, but overall, my body prefers it. And there's something nice about doing things under your own steam and not relying on anything outside of my own skin as well. So yeah, I was doing quite a lot of running back at this point, and there was a gravel path near where I was living, and I was in the space of doing some of this research into pain and expectations. And so when my heel on my left foot started hurting, I thought, okay, it's just because my brain and my body is surprised that I struck a rock a few meters back, and there's no threat. I'm still capable of landing on this heel and running. And it's quite a strong sensation. But if I just focus on my elbows, which feel fine, it'll be okay. Or if I just focus on the happy thoughts or on the goals, it'll be fine. And the pain didn't go away. And I kept running for a little while, ran a few kilometers, and then came back. And there was a piece of glass that actually lodged in my heel.
Oh my God. So you couldn't think that one away with positive thoughts, could you?
No, I couldn't. And I suppose I'm not encouraging people to be stupid. Don't just torture your body and disregard what it's telling you. But at the same time, intentions and expectations do change how we feel and do change how we heal as well. And I do think there's very much a relationship to the anti-fragility concept that Nicholas Taleb talks about in his book Anti-Fragile, where he talks about, you could either be fragile, where you break or fall apart under stress, or you could be resilient, where you stay the same under stress or under turbulence, or you could be anti-fragile, which is something different, where you actually benefit from chaos and you benefit from stress, and you kind of like our body is when we run. Like it has the stress of impact on our bones and strain on our muscles and a challenge to the nervous system. And then give it a good sleep that night and maybe the next night, and it comes back better than before.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing how it does that. So, so within your practice, then, how do you use, like you said, when there is a pain that needs to be addressed? I mean, you need to look at the physiological aspect of it too. So obviously, if someone's got a, like you said, with an MRI, if you can see a torn muscle or whatever it is, you need to deal with that. But then how do you use thought along with that to help?
Yeah, exactly right. So let's take the example of a torn muscle. So we could either load someone up with all the reasons that their muscle is going to hurt or going to suffer or going to be at risk of injury in the future, or we could load them up with all the things that are going to get it better and put it in I suppose, a more robust position going forward. So as an example, we might say, look, Sam, you're carrying a bit of extra weight at the moment. That extra 5 kilos is going to put more stress on your calf, and the more stress on your calf, the more likely it is that you tear it again in the future. Or, now that you've had one calf injury, it is predicted that you're more likely to have a calf injury again later on. Running is a very calf intense exercise. 60 to 70% of our propulsion when we run comes from the soleus muscle, and so we just got to be really careful. And so all of it's about threat. It's all about risk. It's all about the potential for problems to occur.
And what I feel is that the more negative, it kind of goes along with anything. When you word things as don't do this or this, the negative, all your brain hears is, like the muscle's going to tear again. And that's what it
Exactly.
focuses on, basically. It's not hearing, we don't want it to tear again. It just hears it's going to tear again.
Exactly. And so you might say to someone instead, look, we know that running is the best way of getting you strong for running. We know the best kind of rehab for your calf is going to be graduated running. So we're going to start off with sitting down and bouncing your feet up and down off the ground, like jogging on the spot but seated, because that's going to remind your body that we're getting ready for running, and it's going to be really gentle and good for the early stage of recovery, but it's going to be really good for building you up. And then we're now going to work onto some single leg calf raises, and that's going to be really good for teaching your nerves and teaching your muscles how to activate this movement really well so that you can run further. And it keeps coming back to so that you can run further, or so that you can achieve this goal, or so that you can, it's all about goal. And every behavior that's recommended, whether it be an exercise or an encouragement to get an extra hour of sleep, or an encouragement to get a massage or something like that, every behavior is then underpinned with the likelihood that behavior will propel someone towards a meaningful goal, instead of this behavior is being used to stop something bad from happening.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, 100%. I completely agree with it. Yeah.
You would see this in your training and in your coaching, I imagine.
Yeah. I had my mental toughness training workshop last night, and that was one of the things that I spoke about, like with your goals, and that's the thing. It should be a positive goal. So, something that you want to achieve rather than something you want to avoid, and those sorts of things, and all your sort of your self-talk should be that way too, what you want to achieve, not what you want to avoid, So yes, it's very much part of running and really, to my mind, life in general.
And I'm not a fan of positive psychology. I'm not saying we should forget the risk or forget the threat and just focus.
Toxic positivity, don't they?
Yeah, they do. But there's a great article. I wish I could remember the name of it, but a psychologist gave it to me, and it talks about the intelligence of pain, the wisdom of suffering, and I suppose the meaning or the purpose of it all, and not to kill pain with painkillers, not to relieve pain with pain relievers, not to try and deaden that sensation, but to listen intently to what is being taught through that experience or through that sensation. And one of the favorite sayings that I've got rolling around in my head at the moment is that the scariest dragons guard the most precious treasure. And so if there's something that's truly threatening or truly worrisome for us, it's probably because it's covering up something that is deeply important or deeply valuable to us. And so not to then shy away from it.
An example of what that means.
So it could be would you like it to be related to running or to physiotherapy? Or?
Whatever. Because I like the sound of what you're saying, but then I'm trying to sort of extrapolate that to life and wondering how that fits in.
Yeah. I suppose, has there been a time in your life recently or not so recently as well where there's a conversation that I suppose you feel you need to have with someone, but you just don't want to have it just yet?
Yeah.
It's probably because that conversation is going to uncover some shared understanding or some clarity or some, I suppose, some level of mutual cooperation that cannot be gained without having a conversation. But there's this terror that it might go wrong and might inflame things.
Yeah.
And it's almost always better after having the conversation.
Yeah.
And so in that way, the dragon, the terrible dragon, is that threatening beast that might damage the relationship or might harm our self-esteem or might have us feeling defeated. But equally, when we then confront that and say, actually, Isabel, there's something I've been meaning to talk with you about, and you just go, I suppose, courageously into that situation, you then come out the other side feeling empowered, but then also probably understanding the other person and the situation a lot deeper. So I suppose that's an example that hopefully you and some of your listeners can relate to. It's certainly relevant in my life, and I suppose it's also relevant to running, in the sense that, I mean, some runners love running so much that they can't give it up. And I don't know if I'm going to win the respect of your runners, or maybe they'll think, no, he doesn't get me, he doesn't understand it, he's not a runner. But some runners are obsessed with it, and there's a need to practice the thing, let's say running, and there's also a need to get skillful at its opposite, which might be stillness or sitting. And if we're only a one-sided coin, or only one-faceted person, then we probably won't untap our full potential. And I imagine a key part of your coaching is not just getting people to run more kilometers, but also enabling them to recoup.
Yes. Yeah.
Is that something that pops up in your coaching?
Yeah. I mean, and not just even having full rest days, but having easy runs, and learning how to not do everything, hard. Like it doesn't all have to be hard, I guess. But yeah, and I mean, I personally believe in runners doing different things like, yoga or things like that, just to create a more well-rounded body that's not just one-dimensional.
Absolutely. And yeah, it's something we're pretty big on here at Exercise Thought, is we have our 3-on-1 exercise classes where people come in for personalized and highly interesting activities, because we pride ourselves on them not doing the same exercise twice, or at least not doing the same exercise in the same way more than once. And we know that fosters neuroplasticity and stimulates the body in improving much more than doing something they've already done. And
but what about the fact that doing an exercise more than once actually also ensures then that they learn the correct technique for it, and they get, like not doing it continuously for a year, but maybe a few times, to make sure, to get the full benefit out of that exercise. If you're constantly changing it, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, and that's the tension. Absolutely, that's the tension. Some would say that we need to strive for perfection
not necessarily perfection, but getting the most out of that particular exercise, and then sort of moving on and that sort of thing.
Yeah, and I don't know how to easily test this. I'd love to have an experiment where we discipline ourselves to getting the most out of each exercise by practicing it multiple times. But I also suspect that the learning of the human body is optimized purely as a correlation with the exposure to novelty, or the exposure to something different. And I believe that we learn the most in that beginner phase. And there's like a diminishing return.
Then you never get to the mastery phase, which gives those feelings of competence and that sort of stuff. Like, I know for myself, if I went to, I'm a runner, I'm no yogi, but so when I go to yoga, if we didn't, every week sort of do some element of the same exercises, I would sort of probably be put off after a while, because it would just be constant learning, which can be quite stressful. Sometimes it's nice to go, okay, I know this pose. Oh, I'd like to get better at this pose and improve on it, because my first shot at it, well, my 10th shot at it's generally not the best either, but, I'm trying, and it's trying to get to that mastery. That you don't see an element of that being important?
Oh, I certainly do. The sense of accomplishment in mastering something, and the discipline required to not just enjoy the quick win of the beginner, but the hard win and the slow patience of mastery. Yeah, there's definitely a skill in that. one of the gentlemen I love to follow says that specialization is for insects, and that human beings should be adaptable and competent in numerous domains. And I suppose there's probably shades of grey in between those two extremes as well.
That's very extreme. I mean, yeah, that's very extreme.
Yeah, it is. It is very extreme, and it's going to win some fans, and it's going to win some, I suppose. What the opposite of a fan is. I don't want to use the word.
A hater.
I hate it. Yeah,
I don't like that word.
But yeah, you're right. There is a role for mastery, and there is, I suppose the jack of all trades phrase comes to mind. I would prefer to recommend to our clients here at Exercise Thought, and I'd prefer to recommend to myself, knowing that it's not for everyone, that they be I suppose a jack of all trades or a Jill of all trades, in that their body can handle any situation that life throws at them. And I suppose that's where the anti-fragility concept comes into play with injury rehab here at Exercise Thought, is we want to identify first all the situations that are uncomfortable or painful or threatening, and then we want to prepare that person for the perfect storm by throwing them into all sorts of different situations when they're ready. And you're probably right to pull me up on the importance of maintaining a discipline until it's mastered, because that is often overlooked when we're looking for cheap or easy dopamine hits, as we are beginning in something new and maybe trying to hack our way through something.
Certainly for running, I mean, that's an exercise in patience, really, isn't it? And you know, it's very repetitive, but hence why you probably get so many runners.
Well, we saw a lot more during lockdown when people took up running in their 5K radius, and we had a lot of shin splints coming in.
Yeah, and people who had never run before, I'm sure. So
yeah, absolutely. But it is a wonderful activity, and it's lovely to see so many people taking up running in recent years, and getting some coaching as well to understand how they can stretch themselves further and apply those principles as you so often do, apply those principles not just to their running but to their life in general.
Yeah, that's right. All right, so how if we get injured and we're like, oh my God, I always get injured, it's always my right hand side, it's always that stupid calf, and oh my God, how is that helping us or not?
Well, those questions, how is it that I always get injured? Why is it always my right hand side? They can be very useful questions if we actually want to answer them.
Yes. What if we're just using them to complain?
Exactly. Like if we just say, oh, why me?
Woe is me.
Woe is me, I'm a victim. Okay, it's not a useful question. But if you actually sit down, all right, why is it that I'm always getting injured? I want to figure out an answer to this question. Then it would be a very useful question. The first 4 things I would look at would be, are you getting enough sleep and recovery? How's your general mood been in the lead up to this injury? Have you been mentally and emotionally well balanced or not? Did you feel generally sore before that training session or before that competition? And the 4th question would be, did you feel ready to perform? There's a little wellness check. I think people can access it, exercisethought.com/wellness. There's a little 30-second wellness check that people can do that just ask them to self-rate those 4 things for themselves. And those would be the first questions I'd go to. And if someone genuinely wants to figure out the answer to why do I always get injured, or why is it always my calf or whatnot, I believe they'll figure it out. And I suppose that's one of the roles of a physiotherapist is just to listen and to prompt with certain questions that then reveal, often within the person's own knowledge, but subconscious knowledge, reveal the answers to why they're injured and what they can do to be healthy in the future.
But do you also find, though, that people who kind of expect to be always injured tend to be always injured?
Yeah, it's the whole biblical verse of seek and you shall find, isn't it? It's I don't know. I've never come across a study or considered that someone's injury rates may be higher if they expect to be, but there is evidence that says those who identify as having experienced childhood trauma or post-traumatic stress disorder or anxiety and depression have much more physical injury and much more physical pain. And I'm not saying it's just in their head. It's the way that the brain and the nervous system and the individual person sees threats and identifies.
Well, it's probably more on alert, and therefore it just lets the person know about everything just in case, so.
Yes, I agree. Just in case.
Yeah.
Which, just in case, or be careful might themselves be unhelpful messages if we speak them incorrectly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So if someone is injured at this moment listening to this, what sort of thought processes should they be having? Like, obviously they're definitely diligently doing their physio exercises,
of course,
because we know runners are good at that. So, so other than that,
yes,
what can they do about their mindset? Because what often happens with runners is they get into this negative spiral and get depressed and end up sitting on the couch binging on Netflix and junk food. So, I'm not saying that's everyone, but I do know it does happen. How can we stop ourselves getting into that negative spiral if we do get injured?
Yeah, well, look, I'm not a psychologist, Isabel, but I'm aware that this might sound a bit like psychology. If running helps us to run away from our problems, or is I suppose a crutch that we rely on to not go down that spiral, then we probably should confront what is it that is troubling me so much about not being able to run. And I would hypothesize that having answered that question, a person may become a better runner. I would also encourage them to, in addition to doing their physiotherapy exercises, as you said, I'd encourage them to make sure they get restful sleep. I think that's really where it starts. And if that's going to bed an hour earlier, having a melatonin tablet before bed, switching off some blue light like our phones and screens, that may help. So that would be a first protocol. Sleep, to my knowledge, is still the only recovery tool that's been approved by Mother Nature.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's the best recovery tool, and it's free.
Yes. Well, it costs you a bit of time, which...
Yeah, but you know what else are you going to do? Sit on your phone?
Exactly. Yeah, Netflix or sleep.
Yeah.
What about you, Isabel? How would you recommend a runner confront their, I suppose, those questions that pop up when we get injured? Why is this happening? Why does it keep happening?
Well, for me, for those sorts of questions, I guess, yes, I would get them to look at why. Well, yeah, why? And look at where it's coming from. And is it a strength imbalance? Is it, old shoes? Is it, their stride length or whatever it is? Look for different things in that regard. And then when they are injured, if they are physically injured, yes, do the exercises. And I'm a big believer in, when you're doing those exercises, is to kind of not picture the muscles, but really focus on those muscles that you're meant to be working. Because I think if you focus mentally on them, they become stronger in that way. I'm also a big believer in, I like to visualize on times when I've had, injuries, to visualize the injury healing, and in my mind, that is encouraging it to heal, because I truly believe it works. I know some people are skeptical about that. I'm sure you're not, because we're sort of, I think, on the same wavelength here. But
yes,
some people are, because I do tell my athletes that sometimes, and I think some of them are a little skeptical, but I like to give it to them as an option to think about doing, is visualizing it healing.
Yeah, that visualization is definitely an expectation of sorts. When we see something as a possibility or as a future reality, we create the expectation of it emerging. And I definitely agree with what you said. It's I suppose it comes down to the time and place too for each of us. Sometimes we just want a simple solution where someone else solves our problem. Sometimes we want a deeper solution where we solve it ourselves. It's been really wonderful looking at the growth of your podcast and seeing how empowering it is and how encouraging it is, and how people can really equip themselves with this knowledge to be healthier and to achieve their peak endurance in life as well as on the trails. And it's thank you for what you're doing with the community. It's really cool.
Appreciate it. And I think, like you're saying, is all of this can be related back to general life as well. So yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I think I've run out of things to say as well.
And so there was nothing you wanted to add, or anything that you felt was important to?
No, I think that the concept of anti-fragility, the expectancy interventions, I suppose encouraging people to not ignore the body and just think their way through it, but use mind and matter.
Yeah.
Not mind over matter. And I suppose, yes, if people could meditate on those recovery aspects, that would be really important. I do believe that's probably the best way of preventing injuries. Just make sure you're recovering well and
get lots of sleep.
Get lots of sleep, yes, and something I plan to do tonight.
Yes,
and if anyone does have some questions, or they just want to have a chat, everyone down here at Exercise Thought loves this stuff. Our 3-on-1 classes often solve the world's problems as well as talk about physical health. And
so can you just let the listeners know where you're located?
Yeah, so we're in Lilydale on Castella Street, and a beautiful spot. We're also on the web, so you can find us at exercisethought.com, and there's also Instagram and Facebook and a couple of others. I think there's YouTube as well. So YouTube channel. Yeah. And you can contact the concierge on our phone number, which you could probably find via Google, I reckon. All
right, so just look for Exercise Thought and you will find them. And all right, well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It was great to chat, and maybe we'll do one again in another 2 years, and hopefully there hasn't been any other disaster in between.
I'm really looking forward to seeing where each of us are in 2 years. That'd be quite fun. Yeah, let's do that.
All right, sounds like a plan. All right, thanks for that.